You're listening to Jazz by Night podcast with Rashid tonight. I have the pleasure to introduce you to one of our great musician artist, Raa al Khabyyr. He's one of my friend, my best friend, and tonight he will have the pleasure to introduce you to his world, his jazz environment. And I'm gonna have also the chance to ask him some questions regarding his family, where he grown up, and what he think about music, about jazz right now. So, Ra, how are you tonight?
I'm feeling all right.
It's my pleasure to have you here today with us tonight. So, first of all, I would like to ask you. Where did you born? Where did you grown up? Did you born in Montreal?
Yes, I was born in Montreal.
And where did you study?
I studied at first at 6 years old with a private teacher in Aylmer, Quebec. And then at 9 years old with my father on saxophone. At 10 years old by myself on drum set. 11.
So drum is your first instrument?
It's my third instrument.
Third instrument.
Yes. And then at 11 years old, I started flute at the Conservatoire du Québec in Hull, Quebec. And at 20 years old, I decided to continue my music life by myself, to study jazz in particular.
Are you still playing jazz?
Oh
right
yes,
now, yeah?
I've written a theory of jazz which took me 40 years, of which at least 15 years were practical experimentation of it and with it. And I still listen to jazz on a daily basis. And I'm just in love with jazz.
Do you have students right now?
No, I didn't have many students. I did teach at one small school for 1 year. And I had a few private students, but I was my own student.
And maybe I'm one of your students too.
Maybe. Maybe my teacher.
we have the chance to play together for a couple of times, and I know Ra for maybe 1 or 2 years since now. And we have a lot to share all regarding music history, jazz music history. Ra has always something to say about jazz. I'm always learning something new from him. And right now I would like to ask him, what do you think about jazz right now in Montreal? I'm sure that you have the chance to go to assist some concerts in Montreal Jazz Festival. So what do you think about jazz in Montreal right now, those years?
Well, jazz in Montreal is for me a small thing, because I think of jazz on a international level, historical level, and futuristically I think of it as a universal level.
Okay.
But the music in Montreal is still what we call standard jazz. It's still advanced jazz. Musicians are getting better. I don't partake of it too much because I'm always trying to find something new, and it's a question of following the spirit also. It's not just I want to go out there and make money and show off. I'm not saying people do that, but that's not my intention. It hasn't been my intention. My intention was to sort of find a perfect way of jazz.
Exactly.
And if even what I play today is called jazz, but it definitely comes from jazz, and jazz is definitely part of it.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm talking about jazz internationally. There's many of new jazz icons worldwide, in Europe, in Africa. But what do you think about those musicians who came to Montreal, for example, who perform, who bring something new, some other influences? I'm not talking about North American jazz, especially like American jazz. I'm talking about
I think I understand your question. I think jazz got big in the 70s, where it just really like exploded all over the world. Was a sense of funk and rock and jazz mixed together, specifically with Miles Davis and Herbie Hancock.
Yeah.
But today, I find that the progress of jazz is still going on. It's not as big in the media as it used to be, but I feel that all jazz musicians and those who tend to be jazz are trying to continue to progress jazz to a higher level.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
not to go back to 1920 or 1910 and bring back that style. You know, it's a question of musicians themselves. They want to get better.
Yes.
They want even their friends to bring a better style. It's like a painter. You know, you paint one painting and you want your second one to be better.
Exactly. But when, for example, I listen to some Miles Davis fusion, or when I see the evolution of his jazz, for example, I can give you one of his. Let's see. Well, the light of his jazz evolution, he tried to go more onto hip hop, rap.
Yeah, there was a reason for that also.
Yeah.
Miles Davis started at 17 years old with Charlie Parker for a
Yes.
few years, until actually Charlie Parker passed away. And then Miles continued with his own group, which was labeled swing music. And then for about 10 years. And he said that jazz was dropping in the sense of jazz musicians getting work and recordings.
Yes.
So he fused particularly funk music with jazz, because there was a bigger crowd for the funk and the rock. So
Yeah.
he mixed it in order to save jazz, because he played jazz within the rock realm, within the funk realm, and he actually saved jazz. He brought it to another level called fusion, where musicians continued. But after the fusion, I would
Yeah.
say up until about 10 years ago, musicians started to get serious again about progressing, let's say, the theory of jazz. You
Yeah.
know, like what is really jazz? You know, like let's try something. We could include funk rhythm and other rhythms, but we're not just going to stay there, because it seems that jazz changed. You know, like first jazz was like Louis Armstrong, then Charlie Parker, then John Coltrane, and after that we don't know who's next. But even during those four musicians, there were many styles.
Yes. But let's see, there's a lot of European jazz artists who are influenced, but they are bringing something new. When I see, for example, some musicians, Afro musicians that I have here, for example, there's one by the name of Tawfiq Oldamar, just discovered. He's more onto his cultural heritage roots, African roots. He's trying to mix the jazz, actual jazz, like with some Coltrane or Herbie Hancock influence, and mixing all that, and I see like some good results. For example, it's,
Oh yeah, I've been looking for African jazz for years on the internet. And usually when you type in African jazz, it will be swing dance music from the 1940s. And I said, no, this is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for improvisation, Coltrane style, you know. And only recently, I'd say within the last 10 years, have I found music from Africa where the musicians are playing, I would call, the most modern jazz. They're the next step to Coltrane.
Yes,
but we all have our influences, because we know that jazz started in America, North America. But you know that jazz is also the only culture besides native culture that started in North America. Like, for example, the Irish came here. but they still have Irish culture from Ireland. They didn't start a new culture here. They're still the same as the Irish in Ireland. But jazz is renowned to be the first culture that started in America from anybody who's non-native.
Yeah.
So let's give the credit to the jazz musicians for that. And of course it influenced people in Africa and other parts of the world. There's a group in Indonesia called Mostly Jazz, JKT, young musicians, and they play beautiful jazz.
Yeah.
But you can see it that it came from America, their influence. Like my influences are John Coltrane and Charlie Parker. Those are my main two influences. Charlie Parker for the song,
Yeah.
and Coltrane for my fingers.
So Charlie Parker, is there like a song that you that comes to your mind, for
Yes,
example?
for sure. Donnelly. You can hear Donnelly in just about every song in the world.
Donnelly.
Yes.
Actually, I'm having a hard time to find all those songs of Charlie Parker's right now. But what I can do is we can pick one song, for example.
You see Warming Up a Riff?
I see all different kind of.
Well, name me two or three tunes, and because all his tunes were good.
Okay, well, why don't we go with "Night in Tunisia"? Because I wanna talk about it.
By Charlie Parker?
By Charlie Parker.
Wow.
And because since I know that your father, Raa al Khabyyr, he played with Dizzy Gillespie in 1980.
No, I think after 1985.
After 1985 in Havana.
Yeah.
And actually, there was a movie called Night in Havana.
Yeah.
They turned this movie in Havana with during the concert. I imagine. I think so.
Me?
No, I mean your father.
Yes, he was Dizzy Gillespie's saxophone player.
Saxophone player. So they turned a movie
Yeah.
in Havana, and
Yeah.
it was called Night in Havana.
Yes.
So I think Dizzy Gillespie also wrote Night in Tunisia.
Yes, he did.
And they called Night in Havana
Okay,
according
right.
to Night in Tunisia.
Right.
So why don't we listen to Night in Tunisia, and then we'll come back and talk about Night in Havana.
All right.
All right. So let's listen to Night in Havana, Night in Tunisia with Rashid tonight and Raa. And we'll talk to you later.
All right.
Okay, you're still listening to Jazz by Night podcast with Rashid and Ra. So we talked about night in Tunisia, but now we're going to night in Havana. Actually, you're listening to Miles Davis with Dr. Jekyll. So can you tell us, first of all, just I want to know more about Dr. Jekyll with Miles Davis. What can you say about this song, actually?
Well, this was Miles Davis's own group after he played with Charlie Parker, and this would be the start of real swing jazz. This was like not this type of swing where it's like ballroom dancing, but swing in the sense of rhythmic, the drummer playing really swing, very progressive swing music.
Okay. Now I want to go back to your father when he played in Havana in 1985. Or?
Yeah, it was. I'm not sure the exact year, but it was after 1985.
So I heard that your brother was also part of this. He was a drummer.
Yes.
He's a drummer actually. Yeah. And at that time you were in Montreal, or?
Yes, I was in Montreal. Yeah.
And what did you hear about this concert in Havana?
Oh, I heard about it after. Well, actually, not long after, about a week after when they came back to Montreal, because my mother went, and then she told me that they did a movie in Cuba.
Yes.
She gave me a couple of cigars.
Cigars.
From Castro himself.
Do you still have some?
No, they were pretty rough.
And then, when your father came back from his concert with the G. Gillespie, he started teaching, or did he perform? Did he perform after that, or?
No, actually, he was with Dizzy Gillespie probably from 1983, because he brought Dizzy Gillespie to my marriage, which was in 1984.
Oh, to your marriage?
Yeah.
What year was that?
1984.
1984, okay.
He was a special guest.
He was a special
And
guest.
I didn't even know he was coming until I looked around the corner. Oh, that's Dizzy Gillespie. Smoking a cigar.
Smoking a cigar.
Yeah. So I was very happy. And so my father came back to Montreal, but he was on the road all the time with Dizzy. They were traveling all over the world.
Yeah.
And so I didn't see him often after that while he was traveling in the world. And so before that, he was teaching at University of Montreal. He was a jazz teacher there, one of the first jazz teachers at the University of Montreal. And he was taking care of his family.
Yes.
As soon as all my three brothers and sisters were able to take care of ourselves, then he decided to get on the road, brought my mother with him, different concerts all over the world, and they had fun,
And I know that there's some videos on YouTube about the concert that they had in Havana during this period of time, and it was amazing. The way he was playing with Arturo Sandoval. Well, what is it when you see, for example, when you see this video? What?
Well, when I see that video, I never saw my father play like that before.
Yeah.
It's like he progressed 1,000% in soloing and theoretically, because I'm quite theoretical when it comes to listening to jazz solos. But before that, he was more like a free jazz player, but very melodic at the same time, and pretty much with people like Albert Ayler, John Coltrane. One time I actually saw him playing with Duke Ellington Band.
Yeah.
And he got up to play a solo, and I think it was a very easy tune by Duke Ellington, a very famous tune. I forget what it's called, but like a tinky type of tune. And my father gets up, does a solo, but he was playing like twice as fast as Albert Ayler, like going crazy. And I just thought, wow, my father's like, he's like ahead of his time. He's like musically, and and that was with the Mercer Ellington band, you know.
Oh yeah.
With Dizzy Gillespie, he was like a standard jazz, you know. It was very, very cool. He wouldn't go too wild sometimes. Sometimes he would do that on his baritone sax,
Yeah.
where he would play like high notes, you know, like a piccolo, very, very high notes.
So,
He
but,
would-
but did you learn from him when you were?
Yeah, I started, my first jazz lessons were with my father at 9 years old on saxophone. And he taught me things like the whole tone scale and consecutive fourths and, you know, how to be, things to improvise with, you know.
Yeah.
He taught me also how to read more than the conservatoire taught me, more or less. Because I started more or less to read at about 11 years old. Before that it was theory, but to play an instrument and read at the same time, it was more or less my father that really put the stamp on the paper, you know.
Does it all what you learned from your father? Does it help you to conceive your your own theory?
Oh yeah, it did, because especially his theory about consecutive fourths. What he would do is play all the 12 consecutive fourths during his solos when he was in Montreal, and I never heard anybody play them as fast as him.
Yeah.
You know, and so that influenced me. But I started to think, like, do all the fourths fit in this chord? You know, like, as I have a sort of a theoretical mind, because you've got 12 notes of fourths in one chord, but most chords don't have 12 different notes. But still, his music with his band it would fit in, because he would tell them to play certain chords where his solo would fit in, or things like that. And one time he had a show in Montreal. I went to see his show. I was about 13 years old. No, I was actually about 15 years old. And I just thought he was the greatest musician I ever heard. And I told him that in the car when we were going home. I said, "Dad, man, you're the greatest musician I ever heard. The way you played tonight, you know." And he was playing like, I would call it fusion free jazz, you know, like he would do some trills on his soprano saxophone. It sounded like a hummingbird or a bee, you know, like it was so fast, and, you know, it was just like a little bit of scary sound too, but at the same time it was just like, that's the way he plays, you know. And so with Dizzy Gillespie, there wasn't all that influence, or because Dizzy was not like a free Albert Ayler type of music. It was more standard and tunes and melodies. But when I played with my father at Cafe Mojo, my father's club, I was his drummer, and that's the way my father would play with me. I was his drummer, and we never even practiced, never even talked about the tunes we're going to play. We get to the club, set up my drums. Okay, start. You just tell me to start. And so sometimes I had mallets, and I had about 6 tom-toms, and I'd try and make melodies with my tom-toms, or I'd start with a swing, or I'd start with a funk, or a rock beat, and then he'd just come in, and then a couple of years later I found out he was playing tunes from Interstellar Space, from John Coltrane.
Okay.
I didn't know at the time he was doing that, Albert Ayler tunes, etc.
By talking with about John Coltrane, there is one of my favorite songs of Coltrane. I don't know if you know it. It's called Naima.
Oh yeah.
And there's a whole story about Naima actually with Coltrane. So just gonna let you with Naima for a couple of minutes, and we'll come back to you, and we'll talk more about jazz and everything. So let you with Naima tonight at Jazz by Night. still listening to Jazz by Night podcast with Rashid and Ra tonight. Well, unfortunately, we're not gonna have enough time to talk about all the topics, but in the next, our next episode, we will have the chance to hear more about Ra, about the jazz history in Montreal. And Ra, I just wanna know if you have anything to say for the moment till the next episode. Do you have anything?
I think what's going on today is it's a good time to talk about jazz, in the world, especially if the musicians, they're trying to speak up, and whether they're known or not, I think jazz is very important in the sense of cultivating the mind. Not to say that anybody's perfect, but when I look at all the jazz musicians that I don't know and that I know there's many out there, I feel that that kind of knowledge, jazz knowledge, it should be talked about,
Yeah.
And just the mentality of a jazz musician. Most jazz musicians, like they say that music should be taught in elementary school and high school, because it's another language, and therefore you're learning two languages at the same time. But then when you eventually grow out of that, jazz becomes your own language.
Exactly. Thank you for your time, Rob, and I hope we're gonna have another chance to talk more about jazz, and I hope you're gonna stay tuned with us for the next episode. Thank you for your time, and have a good evening. Bye bye.